Welcome to this episode of News for Our Future, where young adults discuss world news as we see it. We young adults are going to be living for another half century or so or more, so we are looking at these stories with long-term perspectives. With this program, we hope to start giving young adults a voice. This is our first program in what will be a series of analytical episodes. I'm your host, Aurelia Corsand, and with me are two young adults working with Our Task, an international network of young people who address global sustainability issues and have written a first edition of the Youth Earth Plan. This is a comprehensive effort to create a plan to safely get us and the Earth through the 21st century. First, we have Jason, a rising junior attending Yorktown High School. Jason, what got you interested into Our Task?
Well, I've always been concerned about the future, and when my friend who works for Our Task told me about it, I thought it was a great idea, and so I immediately contacted Jerry and started helping out.
Great. Next, we have Fadi, a rising sophomore at Carleton College in Minnesota, and he is from Jakarta, Indonesia. What got you interested in Our Task, Fadi?
Well, primarily, Our Task is a nonprofit that is both youth-oriented and research-based, and that's an unusual combination. And also, that's why I've been enjoying my global leadership internship so far.
Great. Well, it's nice to have both of you here with us tonight. So now to our commentary on the news. Let's start internationally. Well, one of the subjects that has been popping up in the news recently is the nuclear issue with Iran. Over the past couple of months, there has been international concern over Iran's nuclear program. Iran states that their nuclear development program is for scientific use and energy use only. However, their attitude and refusal of international inspections has caused worry in other countries across the world. Iran has enriched their uranium to 20%, and they are getting closer to having the potential to create nuclear weapons. What do you guys think of this event, and how is this affecting, or how will it affect, young people in the future?
I think banning putting a blockade on their oil trade would be more effective than sanctions, because the sanctions affect a lot of the people of the country directly, whereas an oil ban would destroy block their economy, and that's where they're getting most of the funding for their nuclear research.
Right, so the government is still getting revenue from oil sales, and so they can keep on going.
Exactly.
And they're not as pressured.
Well, I have a slightly different viewpoint here. Well, my opinion is that the cutting off Iran from oil trade would create a great social turmoil, and that would not be favorable to the future of young Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
And so I favor lifting sanctions and promoting international trade in Iran. The idea is that the nuclear program is supported by the government, and young people who might disagree need a say in the legislative processes, and then they need to freely establish a viable opposition in the government. And they would need entities that are able to fund these opportunities, and I guess these opportunities are able to be created through the funds that are allocated through international trade that enables foreign investment, among others. And this would be more favorable to the future, to the economic and social future of Iran's younger generation.
Exactly. I think that the Iranian youth need to have a say in what's going on, but sometimes it's difficult given their government and their social situation, which has made it increasingly difficult for the youth in Iran to have a say in what's going on and for us to reach them. And it's a difficult situation.
Exactly.
So hopefully we can get inspections in there. And the Iranian government says that they have a right to have nuclear power, which is true. There are many other nations that have enriched uranium to 20%. So what do you guys think about that issue, that aspect of it?
Well, a lot of it has been because they've been banning the inspections, and they've been hostile to other countries in the past. And it's mainly their hostility that's got people worried, not so much having the uranium itself.
Exactly. So in my opinion, I feel like the youth of today should be concerned over this issue because it feels like we are fostering a global attitude of suspicion and conflict instead of one of reconciliation. So Another issue, also in the Middle East region, is something that has been going on for over half a century, the Arab-Israeli conflict. Recently, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Barack Obama held a reconciliatory meeting in Washington. This conflict has been going on for years, with no immediate end in sight. So how do you guys think this will affect young people, and how has it affected young people, not just in the region, but across the world?
Well, if we view the older generation, the current leaders, then we see constant conflicts and conflicting interests pretty much all the time. Yet, if we see the young people who are outside this political and religious spheres, Arabic and Israeli young people are actually capable of working together. For example, there is this orchestra, the West East Divan, that is conducted by Daniel Barenboim and has members from all over the Middle East, including all the Islamic countries and Israel. And of course, another example is the Israeli soccer team, which also has a sizable number of Arabic players. And these are amazing. These are examples of how the young people contradict what their parents and grandparents have been saying. And therefore, I would support the idea of creating a neutral territory, a neutral Jerusalem, as some of our leaders have proposed. This area would be something that is outside the political and religious spheres of all these Islamic, Jewish, and Christian interests, and this would create an opportunity for peace for the future generation.
Yeah, and it's really up to the youth of Israel and the countries around it specifically to stop the violence, because only they can really change the culture of the country. People in other countries can tell them what to do, but it's not going to actually change. It's really the job of other countries just to keep the fighting to a minimum and let the culture sort itself out.
Exactly. There was that time in history when both the Arab side and the Israeli side got together in Norway, and Norway was just provided a safe place for them to talk, and it was a nice neutral zone. And then I guess the opposite of that example would be the Camp David Accords, where Carter would run back and forth in between both parties and try to get them to talk. So there are different ways of going about hosting these talks, and hopefully we can find something that works for both parties in the future.
And even when even when Israel was created, it wasn't created by the people living there. It was created by British pulling out of the area, and they just group people together regardless of beliefs, and it's caused most of the problems in the area ever since.
So hopefully, I don't know if we can have a two-state solution, but hopefully something can be worked out between parties. And if the youth is coming up and they're not as set in their ways and they're willing to work together, like in the orchestra or the soccer team, then maybe there's hope in sight. I hope so.
Yeah, we all hope
Don't we all?
So, we also have some big events happening here at home. A major news item that has been going on is the oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon well in the Gulf of Mexico experienced an explosion that killed 11 workers and resulted in thousands upon thousands of gallons of oil being spewed into the Gulf. It is still gushing oil to this day. Now, what do you all think, and how will this affect, and how has this already affected many young people in the region?
Well, I have an analogy of how the extraction industry, especially the petroleum industry, has been working so far. And it's like using a seatbelt. I mean, well, most of the time, you don't really need a seatbelt. Well, because you're not in an accident for 99.99% of the time. But when you're in an accident and you're not wearing a seatbelt, then it's very, very likely that you will die a painful death. And unfortunately, the petroleum industry didn't wear the seatbelt in this Deepwater Horizon disaster, and so it was a very big catastrophe. And so I think the lesson for our young people is that we should account for a lot more of the ecological and social risk of the extractive industry and all other industrial and service activities in general. And for all these impacts to be considered, we need to empower especially the local people through giving more authority to the lower echelons of the government, and perhaps for things that are very high risk, such as deep water drilling, we might do things such as voting and asking the opinions of the locals of whether they would like to continue such economic activities in spite of their sizable profits. But before we start to act on these, I think young people are also surprised over the lack of outreach and concern at government regulations. Most of the anger has been directed towards the corporate procedures and BP, which is, I think, very, very interesting.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, though, is after the explosion, BP has been doing everything they were supposed to, everything the government told them to do. And they ran out of money and went to the government because there was an amount of money set aside for this kind of thing, and they spent it all. So both sides weren't prepared for this magnitude of a disaster.
That's true. And it's unfortunate. I just saw an article today, and it's been across the news and people have been talking about this, that surprisingly after this disaster, there hasn't been a huge leap in environmental issues. There hasn't been as much of an outcry as should be expected about this disaster and what it means for the environment. How can we change for the future? I mean, in my opinion, it's been a lot of pointing fingers and figuring out why did this specific event happen, and not how can we prevent this in the future? What are we doing wrong? How is the system failing us so badly? And I think that's really unfortunate. So, I mean, do you guys think that after this kind of event happened, do you think that there should be more, what should be happening in terms of the environmental advocacy?
Well, I think what has changed is that since Hurricane Katrina, people's trust in the government has plummeted, and I think that's why there's been less push towards environmental legislation compared to such as, for example, after the Cuyahoga River burning and the oil spill in the late 1960s, which sparked the first Earth Day and the Clean Water Act. And I think now we need to consider other culture-shaping institutions other than the government. We have civil society institutions, nonprofits, and institutions based on faith that have a great mandate and have a great authority over large numbers of people. And I think those institutions through which young people can express themselves more freely are the ones through which we can rely for our environmental future. And so I guess the key is the involvement of the local young people and the policies that affect their local ecosystem.
So it's not, sustainability is not an issue that the government has to solve. It's an issue that society as a whole needs to be working
Yeah,
on.
course,
and
always.
in fact, globally, the different nations, because the ecosystem, the environment isn't limited to one place. Well, this oil disaster might soon affect Cuba or Caribbean countries or in Mexico. We don't know, but it might
Right.
happen soon, and this will that would definitely change our perspective.
Oh, yes.
And so far, a lot of the people that have been directly affected, the fishermen that can't fish because of the oil killing the fish, are actually going into, they've been given jobs helping clean up. So they aren't mad yet because they've still got jobs. But once it's cleaned up, I'm sure you'll see a slight resurgence in the
Oh, yeah.
the pushes for policy changes and such.
Their whole lifestyle
Well,
is
yeah.
gone. Yeah. So, moving on from the oil spill, something that hasn't been in the news much but deserves some attention is the issue of bottled water. Why do so many people who have clean, safe, drinkable tap water, such as people in the DC area, still resort to plastic bottled water? What do you guys think? I mean, I see people buying this stuff all the time from CVS, Walmart, any supermarket, and yet is it necessary?
Well, it's good to have some on hand for an emergency situation. So if the water lines go out, you have something to drink. But you don't need it from your day-to-day life, usually.
Well, unfortunately, I do know some people who pretty much never drink tap water, and it's funny to see them because, well, the DC area is one of the few privileged areas in the world where you can get safe drinkable water right from your tap, and whereas in other parts you have to walk miles and miles to get clean water. And so I think young people like us would agree that these market of bottled water has been created by some kind of a marketing strategy that the bottled water industry has created, and through advertising that exalts the cleanliness and the safety of bottled water, whereas we can simply go to a water treatment plant and see that all these treatment and all these processes that they treat the water with more than fulfill the standards we need. In fact, it might be even better than some bottled water products. So what we can do is the positive marketing of bottled water, of tap water. Why don't we make advertisements about how classy it is to drink tap water, how privileged it is,
true.
which is actually true.
Well, they have all of the
Yeah.
reusable water bottles, you know,
Yeah.
the metal ones, the Nalgene's,
Yeah.
you know, that you can
Yeah.
reuse all the time. And it's the exact same thing as having a plastic. I mean, it's cheaper, you know, even for the
Oh, yeah,
consumer.
it's a lot cheaper. Like if you took all the money you were spending on plastic bottles and focused it on a larger problem like the oil spill, you know, we could get things solved a lot faster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in the water bottle
Oh,
industry.
yeah. They created a need for something that a lot of people don't actually need. And I mean, this is a lot of plastic. I mean, it's a lot of wasted resources, unfortunately.
And I guess, well, this is an example of how people who are not dealing directly with environmental legislation can act, which is to reduce our waste and to recycle. And it is definitely something that young people can get inspired by. Has there been any recent movements that advocated against bottled water in the United States?
Actually, there has been. I know in Concord, Massachusetts, there's a woman who is looking to ban bottled water completely in the city, which I think is a great idea. And actually, they got it into legislation and they're working on passing it. So it'll actually be illegal to have a plastic, you know, disposable bottled water, which I think is great because, I mean, it's something that you don't need. It's bad, harmful for the planet, and it might even, I don't know if it's harmful for us because sometimes they say don't refill your bottled water because there are chemicals in the plastic and the water in it that comes with it is made to negate the effects of the chemicals.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to be drinking that water.
And there was the big scare when Nalgene started leaching chemicals, but no one's mentioned plastic
Exactly.
disposable bottles.
And I mean, they fixed the whole BPA scare.
Yeah.
They fixed that. I mean, it's safe now, and they have, you know,
Or you could get a metal one.
a metal
That's
one.
what I did.
Yeah.
Well, the moral of the story is, I guess, drink tap water. It's a privilege.
It is a privilege.
It's
you know,
a privilege.
Not many people, you know, we're especially in this area, the DC area, and here in the United States, we're pretty lucky to have bottled or tap water, and let's
But then
get rid
again,
of our addiction.
then again, banning it altogether isn't a great idea because then when you have an emergency, you know,
Right.
maybe a tornado comes through.
No more
you, know,
water.
you, don't, you don't know.
That's true.
You don't know.
So you
what
should
could
have
happen
a safe water supply, but
if
there
but
you go.
not excessive.
Not excessive. Not, you know, everyday new water bottle to go to the gym with.
Exactly.
Well, good. Hopefully we'll get rid of our addiction. So now for our special guest, Patrick Swartz. He is 9 years old and from Arlington, Virginia. He is currently attending Bancroft Elementary School. Welcome. So, Patrick, I understand you are concerned about space trash. Can you tell us a little bit about space trash and how you got interested? And
I got interested we wrote this book and my mom she was writing it and I was listening to it and there was space trash in it. So I got interested by that and I looked it up. I got interested and there's a lot of really gross things that happens, like there's trash that, like water bottles floating in like space that are in our orbit. There is broken pieces of rocket, like when rockets go up, when the backside or front side comes off, all the stuff in that and that.
Just floating around.
That's just floating around, and they travel really fast. They travel 22,000 miles per hour.
22,000 miles an hour?
There's 13,000 pieces of
That would
trash.
hurt.
That would, if it hit you, that would hurt. And it's covering the Earth. It's all in orbit. Can you see it from space?
Yes, if you look from another planet, you can't see the whole Earth. It's really gross.
So, oh, that's horrible. It's just covering the Earth like a disease, and it's all from us. Oh my gosh. So you said they're from rockets. They're just left there. Is there rockets, even water bottles? Are there, like, from satellites? I mean, what else?
Yeah, broken satellites.
They just leave them up there. Oh my gosh. Is anybody talking about this? I mean,
No.
NASA's
Nobody's ever heard about it because nobody is really interested in it. Nobody really cares about it.
That's true. I mean, all the environmental groups are focused on Earth, which is important, but, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's just above us that's important too.
Yeah.
I'm like, because you never hear about it. And I'm glad that you're talking about it. You get to tell people about it, make people pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why we want to start people to think as a planet, as people of the planet, and not as people of different nations, because to solve problems like these, we need everyone from every country to think about it and to work together, which isn't the way our governments and our institutions have been working so far. So, Patrick, I have a question for you then. What do you want to see in the future when you look at the Earth?
I'd like to see, like, the whole Earth. I'd like to see a clean, nice Earth planet that we can live on. Because once this Earth is, like, doesn't have any other places to fill trash, it's done, pretty much,
This is all we have.
that we know it.
Wow, that's a tough issue.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. And these are some really big issues that we're facing, from oil in the ocean to trash in the sky. It may seem overwhelming, but as individuals, we can create our own initiatives to make the world a better place.